Okay, look at this, understand this. There are a lot of spot Bitcoin ETF applications out there. Everyone is excited about BlackRock, of course. But besides BlackRock, we have ARK Invest, Bitwise, Invesco, WisdomTree, Valkyrie, VanEck, Fidelity, and even more than just this. When one of these gets approved, they're all going to get approved. That's a lot of demand on the price of Bitcoin. Now, will these get approved? Yes. Understand that because of the landmark grayscale win with the SEC, as you recall, in August, the DC Court of Appeals ruled that the SEC's denial of Grayscale's investment application to convert the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust GBTC into an ETF was invalid and must be reviewed, calling it an arbitrary and capricious rejection. I've always thought of Gary Gensler as a bit arbitrary and a bit capricious. But because of this landmark win for Grayscale, it's going to make it very hard for Gary Gensler and the SEC to deny one of these spot Bitcoin ETFs. And like I said, if one of these is approved, they're all going to be approved. Anthony Scaramucci, who we just had on for an interview, believes this. He articulates exactly this here.
Skybridge will have a position in the BlackRock ETF.
And give us the the tea on what exactly is going on. Is that coming soon? What do you think?
So I don't know. I think, unfortunately, Gensler is going to try to exhaust everything he can to delay it as long as possible before he actually approves it. But I do think it gets approved because I think that Grayscale court case was seminal, and I don't see how Gary or his team gets around that court case.
And the fact that the conversation around a spot Bitcoin ETF is now when, no longer if, it's now when. This is a huge deal. This is a massive shift from even just a year ago.
No one really knows when we're going to get approval. So you're seeing a lot of speculation. You're seeing a lot of commentary. They're using best efforts, like things like the fact that the commission hasn't put up significant roadblocks in disclosure review, et cetera. But again, I think people, even the fact that we're here talking about when as opposed to if, that's a massive shift from even a year ago. And that is, I think, one of the biggest driving forces of all of this excitement.
Let's talk about price. And first, I want to remind you why. Why exactly is this such a huge deal for the price of Bitcoin? First, listen to Rand Neuner of Crypto Banter explain this exact concept to me here.
Everybody says that this BlackRock spot ETF is a huge deal. Is it like really that huge of a deal? Could you help us understand like why, like if this gets approved, why this is going to be so big?
So ETFs give investors a simple way to get into asset classes. And if you think about ETFs, the people that sell the ETFs are the wealth advisors. The wealth advisors manage most the capital in the world and in the United States. And if you let me share my screen again, I'll actually show you a few things here. That is like, if you look at the wealth advisors in the world, that is in the States, this is what they specifically manage. So BlackRock manages $9.5 trillion. Vanguard 8.1 trillion, Fidelity 4.3 trillion, and so the list goes on and on. Right now, if you're a wealth advisor and you believe that you want to be in Bitcoin, and the reason why you may want to be in Bitcoin is because Bitcoin's been the best performing asset class. How do you get your investors into Bitcoin? What's your entry point? How do you do it? One way is that you can be a custodian yourself and try and store the private key somewhere or the 12 magic words somewhere, but that's quite negligent. You could open an account on Coinbase, but most big funds aren't regulated to be able to open an account on Coinbase. You could buy shares in Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust, which is not really an ETF, but it's illiquid. It's traded on what they call an over-the-counter market. So what happens when you introduce an ETF is you open up the world to the fund managers who meet with their clients regularly to be able to put Bitcoin into their portfolios. Okay, now what does that do? Well, now you get the average advisor, and whether the advisor is a big pension fund or whether the advisor is an endowment or whether it's just an advisor who plays golf with high net worth individuals, and he says to them, this Bitcoin thing, it's gone up 83% in the first 6 months of the year, and it's still 50% off its all-time high. And, maybe we should just put 2% of our portfolio. And then what happens is it becomes like switching a switch, like all the rest of the investment products in the world. It's not a hard sell. Right now, you imagine that same game of golf with that same fund manager wanting to go into Bitcoin, and he's thinking, if my client tells me to get into Bitcoin, what the hell am I going to do? Like, I'm going to open an account at BitGo and I don't know how to custody this thing. And, the truth is also investment managers earn a fee for selling investment products. So it's like, if an investment manager sells a fund, he typically earns a fee. Now, those fees are quite regulated, but going forward, they'll be able to earn a small fee for putting you into the Bitcoin ETF. So they kind of have a small incentive to do that as well. So I think it is a big deal.
And now listen to Bitwise, one of the ETF applicants, explaining why Bitcoin price is going to moon after the approval themselves. Here, listen.
Bitcoin ETF is a huge unlock for investors who haven't been able to allocate to Bitcoin or to crypto as an asset class for its past 15 years in existence. So that's why we think at Bitwise, a Bitcoin ETF is the biggest thing to happen to Bitcoin since it was created in 2009. 80% of wealth in America hasn't historically had access to Bitcoin. So we do think that the upcoming spot Bitcoin ETF is going to be a huge influx of demand. And like you said, it's a commodity. Its price is set by supply and demand. And we see a clear sign that demand will be climbing in the near to long term.
What will these Bitcoin, I gather BlackRock has an application out there. Wisdom Tree may have an application. There are probably others. What will these ETFs actually own? Physical Bitcoin? Or
yes.
I mean, it's not physical, it's digital, but.
Yeah, so these spot Bitcoin ETFs will own the underlying Bitcoin itself. People will allocate into these ETFs. The ETF will go out and purchase Bitcoin on the market. And that's exactly why we think it's so bullish for the price of Bitcoin, is because you're going to have this constant influx of demand on Bitcoin as an asset. So it'll hold the underlying asset. That's why people are so excited about a spot Bitcoin ETF, because it's the first time that you've been able to own the underlying asset in this ETF wrapper. So for every dollar goes into an ETF for spot Bitcoin, a dollar of Bitcoin will be bought off the open market.
Okay, let's get into this. We're sure a BlackRock spot ETF will be approved. We're sure many spot ETFs will be approved. It's only a matter of time. And we understand how big of a deal this will be for demand of an asset that has such limited and fixed supply flow. So, what will happen to price? First, I want you to understand that Bitcoin is like digital gold, or gold is like analog Bitcoin. Larry Fink thinks Bitcoin is like gold.
Also, I do believe the role of crypto is it's digitizing gold in many ways. Instead of investing in gold as a hedge against inflation, a hedge against the onerous problems of any one country, or the devaluation of your currency, whatever country you're in. Let's be clear. Bitcoin is an international asset. It's not based on any one currency. And so it can represent an asset that people can play as an alternative.
Other experts, shared by Michael Saylor, here entrepreneur and VC Alexis Ohanian, explain Bitcoin is like gold.
To me, Bitcoin has never felt really all that different from gold. If you explained to me that gold was a really important part of human culture, I'd understand it. As an Armenian, I know, I for whatever reason, just love gold. We have a cultural affinity for this shiny piece of metal, this shiny rock. And it's been built over years and years and years. And there are plenty of investors who won't touch it because they feel like it's not a great asset. But there's a whole heck of a lot of people who have a strong cultural affinity for it. And I think Bitcoin is in a similar camp. Maybe it's a different generation. Maybe it's more sort of technology-oriented folks. But at the end of the day, I'm investing in asteroid mining companies. And one thing I'm certain of is we're never going to find a bunch of new Bitcoin on an asteroid. There's a bunch of precious metals we will end up finding. But at the end of the day, it's a kind of asset that requires a sort of conviction in it as a store of value. And for a whole heck of a lot of people, there has been, at least as of yesterday, another flight to it. But look, I invest with the long-term horizon. That's one of the nice things about this job, is I don't have to worry about markets day to day or hour to hour. I make every investment with at least a 10-year time horizon.
So we know that when the gold ETF first happened in around November 2004, this is what happened to the price of gold. Gold was just coming out of a bear market. Gold rallied 420% after approval. By the way, it did a lot more than this as time went on. Now, of course, Bitcoin is way more volatile and scarce than gold. But if the BlackRock ETF was approved today and Bitcoin did a 420% increase, that would put Bitcoin's price at around $130,000. A $130,000 Bitcoin, very possible. I tend to be a bit more bullish though. I tend to think that Bitcoin will be grinding closer to all-time highs when the ETF is approved, because I don't think the ETF is going to get approved tomorrow. I think Bitcoin will be grinding closer to all-time highs, and if Bitcoin did a 420% increase from a slightly higher price, that would put Bitcoin at a price between $200,000 to possibly over $300,000. So prepare yourself now. By the way, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Daily videos just like this, keeping you informed on the entire cryptocurrency market. If you're interested in making money in cryptocurrency, subscribe to our channel, Daily Videos. Guys, it's just math. Continue digging in to what the experts are saying, because the experts do know what's going on. Anthony Scaramucci, who's in on the BlackRock ETF with them, is equally bullish, if not more bullish. Make sure you subscribe. I'll see you tomorrow.
And final question on BlackRock, just for the people at home who don't really understand what a spot Bitcoin ETF, particularly like by BlackRock, means. Is everybody in crypto says it's like the great savior for price. Is it that big a deal, or how big a deal is it?
Well, I think it's a huge deal. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Bitcoin bull. I'm going to give you the empirical data as to why it is. Number one, 35 years on Wall Street. And what do we know about Wall Streeters? Products are sold, they're not bought. There will be an army of people, salespeople, financial consultants, financial advisors, private bankers that will have digital assets as part of their long-term tactical capital allocation portfolios. BlackRock's not going to have $13 trillion under management and have $0 under management in Bitcoin. They're just not going to do that. So what's going to end up happening is you'll have armies of people selling this to people. And then people will say, okay, well, what's your strategy? I'm going to have this much in stocks, this much in bonds, this much in real estate, this much in private equity. Well, what's your digital asset strategy? Well, I'm going to have 0.5% to 2% in digital assets. So think of the magnitude of that. If there's $100 billion that flows into Bitcoin, the guys at NYDIG or Fidelity think that could have a 11 times factor in terms of valuation. So you could see Bitcoin go from a $600 billion asset to a $6 trillion asset. And by the way, if that were to happen, it'd still be half the price of gold.